Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. So today I'm checking out the JST, or the Joey Sturgis Tones Toneforge Guilty Pleasure plugin. And a plugin, for anyone who's not familiar, is essentially a piece of software we can download and run via a DAW or digital audio workstation. And in this instance, the Guilty Pleasure is like a high gain guitar rig, so we've got amp, pedal and cab options in there. And the way I want to run this demo is I'm going to take us through the user interface of the plugin, but I also want to dissect the track that we heard at the start of the video. So everything we heard on that was the Guilty Pleasure plugin. All DI just straight into that one plugin. There's no additional EQ or other plugins being used. And I'm going to isolate each of the guitar tracks so we can see the settings I've used on each track, and also I'll talk a little bit about why I've chosen those settings. So I'll cut to a screen recording now and I'll take us through the plugin. Okay, so I've got my project opened up in Cubase and I'm going to open the Toneforge plugin, and I'm just going to take us through the kind of user interface window. I'm not going to go into too much detail as there are already a lot of videos kind of detailing all the specifics, but I do want to show all the kind of options we've got to tweak with and play with, and then I'll kind of go into a little bit more specifics when I take us through how I've used the plugin on each of the individual stems on there. So first up we've got our overdrive pedal. That's the first thing in the signal chain. This goes into our amp head. And something that I really like about this plugin is it's very intuitive to use. If you're used to using stomp boxes and amps, that kind of thing, we would adjust them in exactly the same way. If you want to change your gain, for example, you just get hold of the gain knob and spin it whichever way you want. So very easy to use if you're coming from using kind of real amps, real pedals, that kind of thing. Next up we have got the cab options. So the plugin comes with a choice of two. We have the Mesa 4x12 or an Orange 4x12. We also have the choice of miking it up with a condenser, a 421 or an off-axis or straight SM57. And we do actually have the option to upload our own impulse responses if we've got ones that we like the sound of already. For the purpose of this demo, I've stuck with the two that come with the plugin, although at some point I am thinking I might check it out with some of the Victory and the Blackstar IRs that I'm used to, just to kind of see how they sound through it. Next up we've got our pedal board. So we've got delay, we've got wah, and we've got reverb. Again, very intuitive to use. You use them in the same way you would use the stomp box counterparts there. And next up we've got the parametric EQ. So we've got a high pass and a low pass filter, as well as 3 mid-band EQs, and then to finish off we've got our limiter. In terms of controls around the side, we've got a noise gate, we've got our input level, output level, and then if I click this icon, that will give us a tuner. So now that we've kind of seen how everything is laid out on the Toneforge, I'm going to take us through each of the stems on here, and I'm going to play them in isolation so we can hear everything, and then we'll check out how I've set the plugin for each one. Just to demonstrate first though, everything we're hearing is just a DI signal going into the Toneforge plugin, so just as proof of that. And now if I activate the plugin again, and this first track here we've got Custom 22L, Custom 22R. So this is a double tracked rhythm part, and it's kind of a high gain, reasonably high gain I should say, reasonably high gain power chord kind of thickener, just to thicken out what we've got going on in the piano part here. So this is the same guitar, same exact settings on both, bar the fact that this one is using the Mesa cab and this one is using the Orange cab. So if I open up that window, we can see here I've bypassed the overdrive pedal. I've got the gain just below halfway there, fairly kind of standard settings on the amp, and pushed the mids a little bit in the top end. I've gone for the condenser on the Mesa on this one, like I said, and then the right hand side uses the condenser on the Orange. Oftentimes when I'm double tracking, well, sometimes I'll go for exactly the same sound on both sides, on the left and right. Sometimes I'll go for a little bit more variance. In this instance it felt like having the same settings, same guitar with a different cab gave it just enough kind of variance to achieve a really kind of wide stereo spread there. In terms of effects, this is a completely dry patch. I didn't want it to, this is just a reinforcing track, so I didn't want it to kind of be too prominent or pull anyone's ear in terms of effects that way. And again with EQ, I've not done much there, same way with the limiter on this one. So just to demonstrate that with the plugin this time, so this is the left hand side, the Mesa cab, and then the right hand side. And now if we hear both of those together, just to demonstrate the double track effect. So that's our rhythm part. Again, it's just power chord versions of what the piano is doing down here. So if I mute those two, next up we've got our tele intro. And this, I spent quite a lot of time on this track, particularly this intro, finding which guitar I wanted to use. As everything's coming from the same plugin, I wanted to kind of vary the pickups and the different guitars I was using to really kind of explore the kind of diversity of tones we could get. So originally this was a PRS intro and then it was a Strat intro, but in the end I felt like the Tele complemented the part the best. So if we hit that one soloed, now if we check out the tones for this one, I've pushed the input level quite high on this because I'm using single coils in comparison to the humbuckers on the PRS. But it's quite a low gain part, so I've not got the overdrive pedal on. I've got the gain back down on the amp, but again with the output pushed to give us a kind of crunch tone. I've gone for the condenser on the Mesa Boogie cab, and I found this to be my favourite kind of combination that comes with the plugin. And that's not to say it's any better than the others, that was just a personal preference thing. To my ear, I like the sound of the Mesa with the condenser on there. In terms of effects, I'm using the reverb pedal and I've got it set on a Hall. I'm just with it a little bit dialed in just to kind of add a little bit of atmosphere to the track. I've backed off the low and high end a little bit and I've just pushed the mids to help it pop through the track a little bit more, and then I've backed off the limiter just to allow it again to pop through in the mix a bit more there. So that's our Tele intro. Next up, in terms of I guess proper guitar parts that are in the intro, we've got this wah filter part. Let me just make sure everything else is muted. So I'll play that soloed. So the reason I played the full track there, not just a little clip, was I wanted to demonstrate what the automation was doing. So here I've got this set to control the position of the wah pedal. So it's going from like a back position all the way at the back, all the way to the front throughout the course of this intro. So if I open up the plugin window for this one, and I take us to the wah pedal, oops. And if I play the intro now, we'll see that this dial will increase as it plays. Just to give us that kind of filter sweep. I like doing, particularly in high gain stuff, I'm always up for kind of doing filter sweep parts, and it made sense to achieve it with the wah pedal in this instance. So I'll take us through the rest of the settings. This is a bit more of a high gain track, although again I was using, I think it was a Telecaster with Filtertrons, if I remember rightly for this one. So that's quite low output, so I pushed the input quite high, and I've also pushed the output level of the overdrive pedal. Next up, we've got the amp. Again, I've pushed the output level of the amp, and I've got quite a lot of treble and presence in this one. I was quite picky with the tone on this, as it's a filter sweep. I wanted to make sure there was no kind of quiet spots or any kind of spots where it was too prominent in the mix, as it's going over a whole kind of frequency spectrum. So I wanted to find something that kind of sat well within the track. So this is one of the instances I mentioned in the start of the video where sometimes a tone outside of a mix might sound a little bit peculiar maybe against how it sounds in the mix. I've gone for the 57 with the orange cab on this one. Again, it felt like it gave a consistent kind of output in the mix there, and it kept out of the way of the Tele with the Mesa. In terms of the effects, I mentioned the wah pedal before. I've also got a bit of delay just to kind of thicken the part out a little bit. And in terms of EQ, I backed off some low end, backed off some top end, and I've just pushed the mids a little bit, kind of furthering what the 57 was doing, I guess. And the limiter I pulled back quite far, as it was a low output set of pickups, so I wanted to really let the part pop out. Next up in the intro, I've got this, or this pair rather, of, let me just hide that automation a second. I've got this pair of reverse swells. So these are power chords I've stolen from the PRS track, and basically I've just reversed them. So everything is the exact same settings that we had on these two, and just to demonstrate that. There we go, and that's just to take us into the main kind of body of the track. So if we take us over here now, oops, we can see we've got a few more guitar parts jumping in. The Custom 22 is exactly the same patches. I've not used any automation to change tones between sections or anything like that. It's still just doing the power chord ring outs. So next up we've got the Schecter Funk L and Schecter Funk R. So this was initially going to be a double track. I actually ended up taking it out as a double track because it felt like it was getting a little bit crowded at this point. So I ended up just keeping the right hand side, and if I open up my mix window a second, we can see it's not all the way to the right, it's not hard panned, just enough to kind of set it off center to kind of balance with this other part, and the Shergold part, which I'll take us through in a second. But if we just hear this this Schecter Funk part isolated a second. So it's a kind of it's just to liven the track up a little bit, I guess, over the power chords, and it's more one of those parts that's not necessarily meant to be heard, but it's meant to be missed when it's not there. So just to add a little bit of kind of movement to it. In terms of the tones that I'm using for it, it's quite a clean tone, so I'm not using the overdrive pedal. I've got the gain backed quite low, and I think this was the same Schecter Filtertrons guitar, if I remember rightly, when I filmed it. I've gone for the Mesa condenser combo again that I mentioned like before. Completely dry. In terms of EQ, I've not touched that, and I don't think I've touched the limiter either. No, I haven't. Again, I didn't really want to draw much attention to this track. It's just as a kind of texture thickener, I guess. So next up, I've got the Shergold track, and this is doubling the bass part. So if I play this by itself. So it's quite a kind of musy part, I guess. So if I open up the settings for this one now, a little bit more gain on this. So the Shergold is essentially a Strat. It's a single hum guitar, and I think I'll double check the video, but I think I was using the neck pickup for this. And I've pushed the output again because we're using single coils. I've really pushed the level of the output level of the overdrive pedal. Quite low gain but high output. Again, to go for that kind of crunchy tone rather than a particularly high gain one, with a lot of top end on there. This has got the Orange 57, and I chose this to stay out the way of the solo part, basically. Completely dry again, and in terms of EQ on this one, I backed off some of the low end as this is doubling the bass part, so I didn't want it to kind of get too heavy in that frequency spectrum. I've also backed off some of the top end just to stay out of the way of the solo, and to allow the solo's high notes to kind of have their prominence. And I pulled the limiter back a little bit, just to kind of season to taste, really, to allow it to kind of have the amount of volume it needed to be heard but not kind of get in the way. So lastly now we've got the solo track. So this is on the Ambler. I'm not going to play the full thing, I'll just play a little bit of it. So this is, I guess, fairly standard for a high gain lead sound. I've got the overdrive pedal on. This guitar has P90s. They look like humbuckers. It's a Seymour Duncan Fat Cats. So they are a lower output pickup, but they're quite high up. So they're not quite as low output as some kind of standard P90 pickups, I guess. In terms of the amp, everything's fairly centralized apart from the treble and presence, which I've kind of pushed a little bit there to help it stand out on those high notes. I've gone for my favorite combo again, the condenser and the Mesa 4x12. And in terms of effects, yep, I've just used the delay. Although I've got the delay mix very low, I found that when I was doing that alternate picked intro thing, the delay was making it sound a little bit crowded, particularly with all the other guitar parts in there. So it's a very kind of subtle delay effect that I've got going on. In terms of EQ, I've just pushed the mids a little bit, and just to help it stand out, and I've pulled off a little bit of the top end just on some of those high notes to take off some of the a little bit of the bite there, I guess. And I pulled the limiter back again just enough to allow it to stand out in the track. So if we close that now, the last guitar track we've got on here, take us this way, we're back to that wah filter. So again, exactly the same settings. This was just a closer. And for this, I've backed the automation down, so this is the wah is in like a mid-cocked position. So again, I'll just to demonstrate one more time, I'll just show the settings for that. So that was with the higher gain kind of setting, with the Orange 57 on there. A little bit of delay, obviously, with the wah pedal, and a little bit of low end and high end back down to match the 57. So that was a Guilty Pleasure plugin by JST Tones. If you've got any questions about the plugin or anything else, like the guitars used or plugins in general or anything like that, let me know in the comment section. If you did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. As always, thank you for watching, take care, and I will see you in the next one.